Hello and welcome to today's video with a message. So I did a video on parenthood and about repeating your parents' mistake, and basically it was a lot about how you should look at what your child needs and that they are messengers. They're coming here to remember us of who we are, and they are not the problem. And you as a parent should be really aware of what environment you are giving your child and what environment is most beneficial for their growth. And I was in that video mostly focusing on the system of the family, and the parents, like how the child is behaving is saying something about you as a parent, about you. It's not about the child. But in this video, I want to expand the system. So of course, let's go to the system of the society or the culture. And in saying so, I will put on some weight of responsibility and fault of the parents. Because yes, you are, as a parent, are responsible for your child's growth. But again, if you are programmed in a certain way, as I said in another video, if as many of us are, if you are programmed in a way of suppression, and if you're not aware of it, you unconsciously are going to suppress your child instead of, promoting an environment for the child where the child is free and free to have their own thoughts, to develop their own thoughts, and free to follow their heart, not a closed heart, not a scared heart, but an open heart that has the potential of unconditional love. But if the parent is sleeping and stuck in past programming, it's very difficult to be the parent you want to be. So again, I'm just saying that's the conflict, that if you have an ideal of how you want to be as a parent, but you are not, it might again be this gap between unconscious processes in you, how you're stuck in unconscious past patterns, which becoming a glitch to how you want to be as a parent. So no matter how many books you read on parenthood, how hard you try, you're not going to be that parent you want to be if you're still stuck in past programming. So then you just look at the video on how to become free, like from past programming, so you can, become aware of it and then take the steps to change. But so again, the parents are influenced by their own childhood, and then they do the same thing. They repeat the same things with their children. But humans are influenced by society and societal rules and societal norms, which is supposedly created by other humans, yes, but there is a world that we have created, like a culture, norms, that of course highly influence parents. The system of the family is not an isolated system, so it's not, the fault of the family per se, or the parents per se, because the parents and the family is living in a certain environment where there are certain norms. They are living in a system. So the family system of the family is existing in the system of the society. So I want to bring that in also to help you as a parent or as a child to parents to maybe work on your capacity to forgive your parents, actually, to become aware of how helpless we are to norms that we are born into, and that it truly takes a certain individual, or it takes a lot of inspiration from coming from the outside for a person in a family system or in a societal system to wake up and to try to and start to think, okay, this is a system that I'm stuck in and I'm operating in, and I'm repeating things in this system. But what if there is another system? Or what if I can create a system that is more free, that is more based on authenticity and love and respect and integrity and free thoughts, where people can cooperate in a system like that? What if that can exist outside of the system that is more about control and and more rules of how you should be or how you should not be, that has highly influenced me. So for a person to wake up from that or become conscious, it takes a certain individual, or it takes like that the system is disturbed by something from the outside, like disturbed by love, or disturbed by something that can trigger new thoughts. If you are not disturbed by, or if you're not open enough for these new thoughts or for the signs of something that disturbs the system, then you're going to be stuck. So first of all, I want to normalize or validate how difficult it is to be the parent you want to be for your child. If you are living in an environment that is actually not promoting a child's best well-being. It's sad to say, but there are many places in the world where we are saying that, well, we are promoting children and their health and their growth, but where it's actually just words. And when you start to look at the details of what environment that's been created for the child, you will notice, or you will start to question, well, is this actually for the child's well-being, or is it actually to, create individuals that are very good in adapting to authority and are very good in learning the norms that are already created, instead of listening to the child and encourage them to contribute with their ideas, with their new fresh energy to the society, which is what actually makes the society evolve. It's when this fresh energy, when the children are born, as I said before, they are coming with this fresh but still ancient wisdom, ancient wisdom that was forgotten. So they're coming with so much to contribute. And what do we do? Well, let's say in the Western society, at least, what do we do with our kids? Well, we very early on, we put them in childcare. We put them in a system where there are rules when you're supposed to play, when you're supposed to sit down, and when you're supposed to be outside, and when you're supposed to go inside. So that's the first step, to help them to forget what they wanted to contribute with. That's the first step to inhibit their openness. We're trying to push them into the system of childcare. And please don't understand this. I'm critiquing the childcare per se. I'm just talking about, patterns and systems to inspire you to think about this. And then what do we do next? Well, then we put them in school, which is very much the system. And in school, there are rules when you should listen to someone. And they're also very much, already predestined what you are supposed to learn. Certain subjects that the child is supposed to learn, you're not allowed to learn whatever you want. No, it's someone who already made a decision. I wonder where that decision is coming from. You can wonder, who decides these things and why, but I'm not going to go into that. But anyway, it's predestined what the child is supposed to learn and read about, and when, at what times, how long, and in what way. And that's the official school system. Then of course we have some school systems where the children can learn in more creative ways, where the teachers are more looking at the child, what is the special need for this child, and how does this child learn. And so there are schools, which is hopeful, where they're more trying to focus from the perspective of the child and how does this child learn. But in the normative school, this is, it's a very clear system. And I wonder then, let's wonder, this is not new thoughts, obviously, but what happens with the child's free potential, or the potential to, develop their own thoughts, and the potential to contribute to society with this new, fresh, open ideas. What happens with that state? Well, it restricts more and more and more. And, eventually they are just like everyone else. in the society where we, are just a product of something we learned, of a program, of a system, where there are very clear norms of how and what you should think and how you should express it, and where we can talk about that. Oh, we're open to different ideas and free speech and so on and so forth, but actually we're not, if everybody thinks and have about the same, or grew up in the same system. So in a society like this, it's actually very hard for you as a parent to try in some way to keep and promote the authenticity of the child, and to see, as I said in another video, to really see the perspective of the child. I really pressed that in the video on parenthood, like the foundation of love for a child is when you give the child an experience that someone had taken their perspective. That's the one foundation, that's a very important foundation for love, that you feel like, wow, someone really wanted to get to know me and my brain and my heart and my mind and my way of operating in this world. Someone really wanted to get to know me. Why is that important? Because then I feel safe. I feel safe when someone knows me. And also I feel encouraged. Someone, is interested in, what I have to contribute to this world. And as a parent, though, if you yourself is still asleep in a system and has no perspective on your own, you don't know your own perspective because you're not free. You are a product of past reprogramming or past programming, and you are sort of a prison in a past system that you grew up in and in the current system that you're living in now. So actually you don't have your own perspective. You have the perspective of the system that you came from and the system you're living in now, which is similar. So you don't have your own perspective. And how then are you gonna have the ability to take your child's perspective if you don't have contact with your own perspective? I would say it's very difficult. So I'm giving you some rest. I'm giving you some slack now from the other video when, it was more hard on you. Maybe some people wrote it was nice, but anyway, I said then, yeah, it's the fault of the parent, and I still, that's one perspective, but just this goes broader. Like, yeah, but the parents are also victims, or they are also helpless in this system if they are asleep and not conscious. So the parent first obviously needs to remember their own authenticity, their own heart, their own thoughts in order to promote an environment like that for their child. And if you're living in a very normative society, well, you have a lot against you, right? It's if the child spends like 6 hours a day in school, and then maybe childcare 2 hours after that, and then you work yourself 8 hours a day and you pick the child up, and what do you spend, like 1 hour 2 hours with the child, and then you take them to soccer or another system, and then or this and this training and whatever, like how much time do you actually have with your child to be able to influence it and encourage your system, or like a free system, or and promote their own thoughts? You don't have so much time. I would say it's a very difficult task for you, because the child spend most of their time in a predestined system, like in norms that society created. I guess people once created it together, that became norms in society. So time is also very difficult. Like, so even if you are sort of awake, you don't have a lot of time with your child to influence it with encouragement to think on their own, and to create their own system, right? So I'm just saying it's a difficult task for you. But what you can do is to become aware of this, to become aware of, okay, so my child is spending a lot of time in the system, so of course I have to take that into account. And if you have no choice of changing the system, like you have no choice of moving to another place or changing school for the child, because that's one thing you could do. You could change the school where it's promoting free thoughts, or looking at who who the child is, and then inserting knowledge in the child, but from the perspective of the child, not from the perspective of the knowledge, That's a big difference, actually. If you are trying to teach the child something from the perspective of the child, or you're trying to teach the child something from the perspective of the knowledge that you're teaching. Think about that for a while. It makes the whole difference, like the intentions of school. Is it I know better, or the system knows better, and you should adapt my child? Or is it, this is a child that is incoming with a lot of potential, and what happens when I insert this knowledge into the child's brain? What does the child do with the knowledge that then they can contribute to the society and develop something? That would be, according to me, that would be a nice society. When you think of knowledge, let's pour this knowledge into this fresh brain, but not because I want to fill the brain with knowledge and wipe out the potential and the authenticity in the child. No, because I want to see what happens when these two merges. I want to see what can this brain do with this already existing knowledge. How can it develop more? How can it develop to the society, so the knowledge, transform into something new, instead of just repeating the same knowledge over and over again, and everyone gets molded in this way of thinking about knowledge, and wipe out their own authenticity. So that way of learning would be nice if it, I think, would be in more places. So be aware of you, and then as a parent, what kind of environment you are living in, and that your child is living in, and it's in the end your responsibility to give the most open-minded environment for your child. But I don't know, sometimes I don't know what places in the world, though, where it's not many of them. I don't know. But be aware of it, and be aware of your time with your child, because that's another problem that, again, especially in Western society, we don't have time. We just work, and then kids are in school. Someone else is taking care of your child, right? So that's also an important discussion in this. What has happened? Well, the power to take care and influence and mold our child into individuals in the society, we have given it away to experts. And now, even, I'm one of them. I'm, instead of trusting yourself, your own capacity to heal, we are paying people, psychologists, to tell us how to heal. So I'm very much part of the expert society. And if we have problems with our kids, we also go to an expert to tell us, how am I supposed to be a parent? It's the most natural thing in the world to be a parent. It should be, but no. And we have to pay someone to tell us, because we are so lost. And I'm not saying that we should get advices from people with experience, of course, but now it's such a expert society where we pay people for everything. And it's good. It might help us to develop and inspire more, but the downside of it is that we are taking away our own independence, our own independent thoughts, or let's say the faith in our own capacity to heal or to make wise decisions, right? Because that's another thing. Our body has an incredible natural ability to heal, both physically and psychologically. But in this society, in some environments, we are taken away. We are distracted by that natural ability to heal, both physically and psychologically. It's not either or. It's not black or white. But you start to think about the split here, and what it does to us to be taken away our faith to ourselves. And so again, coming back to, as a parent, if you have no time with your child, if most of the time your child is in another system, what chance do you have as a parent to influence the child with your system? And again, your system might be, the existing system of the society, so it might be the same, or you are awakened and you want to do something else for your child. But what ability, what chance do you have if you don't spend, if another system is spending more time with your child? Of course, you don't have so much chance, right? So that's another problem, that most of the time of our child's time is not spent with you as a parent. It's someone else educating them, someone else that is responsible for their upbringing. And I'm not saying if that's a problem or not, but just think of your own, like who is responsible for education, what system is responsible for education, what system is responsible for this upbringing for your child, and what is your choice in it, and who do you trust more? So this message to you is about giving you some understanding and forgiveness for yourself. If you're not succeeding with your child, it's not only your fault. It's your responsibility to awaken and make healthy choices, but to be aware of and be kind to yourself that you are programmed in a way that you didn't choose, right? And then you're going to program your kids in the same way, and you're going to allow society to program them in a certain way. And also, in Sweden, it's against the law to homeschool your kids. You're saying, what can you do? It's against the law. I mean, you are illegal if you're homeschooling your kids. So Sweden is a free country and all that, supposedly, but it's illegal to homeschool your kids. So then you have no choice. If you're gonna live in Sweden, you're gonna follow the rules, and you're gonna have the system take care of your kids. So you're saying, I'm not saying education is the most important thing. I'm talking about the systems and our free. Who are we in the system? Yeah. So it's not your fault. I mean, it's not your parents' fault. I know I said it in another video because I wanted to make a point that from the child's perspective, yes, it's your parents' fault that they did this to you. But now I'm evolving it. So in a way, it's not your fault as a parent, because you are just brainwashed or programmed in so many generations. However, it's your responsibility to awaken, to see like, okay, what norms am I contributing or am I repeating? And what are my own values? And how can I take steps to try to, reclaim my brain again, reclaim my norms? And what happens when I do? Where do I want to live when I do? Maybe I can't continue living where I live if I start to reclaim myself and my thoughts. I don't want my kids to live there. Then I should move them to another school or move to another culture or whatever. I don't know. Because it might be hard to awaken to your own thoughts while continue to live in a more suppressed system. So in the other video about parenthood, I said that kids are carriers of symptoms of what's wrong in a family. It's not the kid, it's in a whole system. And now I'm saying, humans are humans in a society, humans in the world. And what happens to humans in the world are carriers of symptoms of what's wrong in the whole system, in the whole world. So if we have a society with criminals, we can look at the problem of the individual, that they are sick or whatever, that they had a bad upbringing and so on. But we can also look at it in a systemic way. So if there are a lot of criminal acts, of course, in a society or in parts of society, it's just a sign that something is off with the whole system of the society. So they are just messengers. They are carriers of symptoms of what's wrong in the whole system, in the whole family, in the whole, world. So start to look at the world as a system, and where there are wars, and when there are wars, for example, where there are conflicts, it's not, don't, just look at evil people. It's like, and what does this conflict over here tell us about what is wrong with the whole system of the world? Like, it's an imbalance. You cannot look at just a country or two countries. It's about balancing, forces and energies in the world, just as it is in a family of four. It's not just father, it's just not mother, it's the dynamic between them and how they interact with their children. So how can this help you become a better parent for your child, which was my main point? Well, first of all, it can help you to understand. I said in another video, the key to change is always, it's not methods, it's not other people, it's you and how well you understand yourself. So this video, I hope to, help you with, for some it's new, but for many, you've already thought this yourself. It's nothing new, but it's just a reminder that might help you to start to question your way of living and your way of living with your children, and what you put on your children, what norms, what thoughts, and what values, and to start to think of where do they come from, my values, norms, and thoughts. Am I free, or where are they coming from? And when you are becoming conscious of that and the patterns of that, then start to think about, okay, what I want then for myself and what I want for my kids. And am I willing to make that change? Do I have the capacity? Do I have the possibility to do the change? It's not always that you do. But do I have the possibility, or what can I change in the small ways or in big ways in order to promote an environment for your kids where their brain can, be a source of potential instead of becoming a prison, or just like everyone else, source of potential. How can you promote that for a child? I think it's not our fault, but it's our responsibility to do that for a brighter future. They are our future. They can help the world become a better place where there are brighter energies and more potential. School has a big part of influencing our kids, but something maybe even more important today, that is, very important also to mention for our modern society today, is of course all the time that the kids of today's modern Western society is spending with screens. And what is there in screens? Well, there are so much influence from content that we as a parent cannot so easily control. The whole world is coming into our child's brain through that screen, like from the computer, from the television, from the phone, and through all of this social media. It's so much, the whole world is coming into our kids' brain, and we cannot control that content. And it's very difficult also for a parent to ban like all screen time for a child, when if they're living in a society where there are screens for the child. I mean, it's then you're gonna have other problems. The child is gonna feel as an outsider, etc., etc. So in a way, that's so unfair. Can be very frustrating for a parent, that if you as a parent have maybe certain values, but you're living in a society where you cannot, stick to those values for your child. Because if you do, there will be other consequences for the child. It's going to be an outsider, it's going to be angry, or it's going to be sad, depressed, and it's going to, not keep up with other kids, etc. So it's like a very difficult situation for the parent. Like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Because if you do bring it in, the screens, then you will have to work as a police officer almost with the kids. You're gonna prohibit and put rules, and you have to also be super engaged. Like former generations before us, they didn't have to engage at all in this way that we do. And my parents told me, and yours as well, and parents before that, the kids did their own thing more, and they didn't have to engage in the same way in the kids' world for good or worse. But now it's like we really have to. We are forced to engage. And as parent, you might feel frustrated that you are forced to engage in something for your child's sake that you didn't choose yourself. It's very frustrating. I didn't choose this to be interested in this television show or in this social media app or in this video game or in this interest or whatever, and it takes a lot of time to engage in the child's world. And I want to add this because in the other video I said you have to engage in your child's perspective. You have to take your child's perspective. Yes, but it's a bit complicated and it can be resistance if your child's perspective is so influenced by things you don't like or things you don't stand for as a parent, right? Things you didn't choose. So now I, as a parent, need to engage in this world of my child with, a lot of things that I don't like or I don't think is good, but I have to do it in order to make my child feel cherished, and also to protect my child, and also to guide my child. And yeah, this is for every generation. The parent might not like the child's interest, but it's not only about that. It's also that you are sort of powerless to the child's interest, because now it's so much more to choose on than it was like 50, 100 years ago. Then the child couldn't be influenced by the whole world as it can now, and by everything that's going on in the social media apps and so on. You have a lot less power to restrict the child. So again, the education system of the education is one thing, but this is just even bigger. It's more difficult to control as a parent, and we give the screens to really small kids, and also that's difficult since we are already so overwhelmed as parents with tasks and chores, and we're supposed to both make a career, and then we're supposed to be fun as parent, we're supposed to engage in all the activities, we're supposed to have our own life, and we're supposed to have a cozy night with our kids, and we're supposed to do everything. And then also we need to engage so much in the world that maybe we don't agree on in order to protect our children. That's sort of an overwhelming task. And so it's not our fault as a parent if it's too much for us and we get burnt out, or actually if we just say, I can't do this, I cannot engage in all this. I'm going to let this just happen to my child, and it's just too much. I don't blame you if that's how you feel. I totally understand that it's overwhelming to engage in this much if we are living in a society that pressures you with all these influences, and also with the influence from the screen. It's for sure understandable that it's overwhelming and that you're shutting down in some way, or that you're becoming all stressed out yourself. So yeah, being a parent is not easy today. It's not at all easy, but still, you still have to see it as your responsibility, not your fault, but responsibility to awaken to all these things, and then do everything you possibly can to protect your child, the brain of your child. And even the small things is so important for our future, to have our brain intact, and not everyone should be influenced by already existing norms and totally overwhelmed by it, as social media can do with all the very quick stimuli and just this blip, and it's it's so much for your brain to take in. And also that it's not normal for the brain to travel. Like there's a clip where you're in Sweden, and then there is a clip where you're in Algeria, and then it's a clip where you're in Spain, and it's not normal for the brain to travel that fast between different contexts. So the brain is totally overwhelmed, and especially for a kid that is so open. So that's also a challenge for us as parents. And best would be to live, well, the norm is that to not have that many screen, where the environment is that it's more fun to be with your friends or to be in contact with other people than to be in contact with screen and people in the screen, because obviously the kid will be more attracted to the screen if the 3D environment is not as attractive. Like if it's no fun conversations, if it's no love and blah, blah, blah. So of course, if it's more cold, that environment is going to be more attracted to the life in the screen. So that's what you can do as a parent. You need to create an environment that totally competes with the environment in that screen, right? You need to, yeah, so that's finally I'm getting to to some sort of, because this was sort of hopeless and dark, but you need to, so love is always the answer. Love and light. So you need to create an environment where the kid wants to rather be than in the screen. And I'm sure you can look, if you just observe kids with happy, high vibe, loving parents, I'm sure that they are looking at screen much less than kids with parents low vibe and a lot of problems. Of course they're gonna go into the life of the screen. So that's what you can do, except everything else I said, to move or whatever, it's different parts. But if you can't, be sure to create a loving, high vibe, creative environment so that the kid rather shows that over screen. It's so important how you choose it. Well, look at all my other videos on how you let go of the past and choose a new paradigm of love and life and education adapted to you. So that's what you can do. And potentially this will lead us to step by step a better or open world that is more adapted to us and our brain and our bodies, instead of the reverse. We are adapting to something cold, detached, and overwhelming that is not promoting our well-being. So I hope this was helpful for you, triggered a lot of inspiring thoughts. Probably many of you already had a lot of these thoughts. I'm just reminding you of what you already maybe know, some of you, and for some it's new. But anyway, I hope this inspired. Please remember to sign up for my newsletter so we can grow this together and we can remind ourselves, we can remember who we are together, and comment if this is something you want to say about this or inspire you. And yeah, let's remember together who we are so that we can help our kids to stay with who they were meant to be. Thank you and have a nice day.